The first thing that stopped him wasn't the rain or the empty road or the flickering streetlight. It was the sound of quiet crying, the kind that tries not to be heard. Mark had learned that sound well since becoming a single father. It was the sound his son made when he thought being brave meant suffering alone. When Mark turned toward the bus stop, he saw a small figure sitting on the cold metal bench, her head bowed, her hands gripping a worn backpack like it was the only thing keeping her from disappearing. Her eyes were open, glassy and unfocused, staring into nothing. That was when Mark realized the girl was blind, and completely alone. Mark hadn't planned to stop. He was exhausted after a 12-hour shift at the warehouse, his back aching, his mind full of bills and worries and the promise he'd made to be home before his son fell asleep. But something in him refused to let the car move. He parked, stepped out into the drizzle, and approached the bus stop slowly so he wouldn't startle her. The girl flinched anyway, sensing his presence before he spoke. "I'm sorry," Mark said gently. "I didn't mean to scare you. Are you waiting for someone?" She shook her head. Her voice was small but steady. "No, sir. The last bus already left. Do you know when the next one comes?" She hesitated, then whispered, "There isn't one." That answer hit harder than Mark expected. He looked up and down the empty road. It was past midnight. No shops were open, no houses nearby, just the bus stop and the rain. "Where are your parents?" he asked. Her hands tightened on the straps of her backpack. "They told me to wait here." "How long have you been waiting?" "I don't know." It was still light when they left. Mark felt something twist painfully in his chest. "What's your name?" "Lily." "Lily, I'm Mark. I have a son about your age. I can't leave you here." She didn't respond right away. When she did, her words were careful, rehearsed. "They said if I left the bus stop, I'd get lost. And if I got lost, it would be my fault." Mark swallowed hard. He had seen cruelty before. Life had shown him plenty after his wife died, but abandoning a blind child like this felt beyond cruel. It felt inhuman. He offered his jacket when he noticed her shivering. She resisted at first, pride fighting fear, but eventually let him drape it over her shoulders. He asked if she was hungry, and her silence was answer enough. Mark made a decision that scared him as much as it felt right. He called his son, explained he'd be late, and promised he'd explain everything soon. Taking Lily home wasn't easy. She was tense the entire drive, flinching at every turn, asking where they were, how far they'd gone, if he was sure he wasn't lying to her. Mark answered every question patiently, even when his own doubts crept in. What if he was overstepping? What if her parents came back? What if this made things worse? At home, his son Jacob watched from the hallway, eyes wide with confusion as Mark helped Lily inside. Jacob was 11, old enough to understand something serious was happening. Instead of asking questions, he quietly brought Lily a glass of water and a sandwich. She cried when she touched the plate and realized someone had made food just for her. The next days were filled with uncertainty. Mark contacted the police and child services, explaining where he'd found Lily. An investigation began, but there were no missing person reports matching her description. Lily didn't know her address. She didn't even know her last name for sure. She said her parents moved a lot and didn't like people asking questions. Her blindness, she explained, had been getting worse since she was little, but doctors were too expensive, and not worth it. The challenges piled up quickly. Mark struggled to juggle work, parenting, and Lily's needs. She had nightmares, waking up screaming that she'd been left again. Loud noises made her panic. Silence scared her even more. Jacob, though kind, had moments of jealousy, confused about why his dad's attention was suddenly divided. Money became tighter as Mark paid for doctor visits and mobility training sessions out of pocket while waiting for assistance approval. Then came the truth. One afternoon, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Lily asked Mark if he was going to send her back when her parents were found. The fear in her voice was raw and deep. Mark promised he wouldn't let anyone hurt her again, but she shook her head slowly. They didn't lose me, she said. They planned it. Mark felt the room tilt. Lily explained how her parents had argued for weeks about her. How they said she was too much. How they talked about starting over somewhere new. The bus stop wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. They told her to sit and wait because someone better would come. She believed them, because she wanted to. Mark had to step outside to breathe. The rage and grief tangled together until he could barely tell them apart. He thought of his own wife, gone too soon, and the promise he'd made at her grave to protect their son no matter what. Standing there, he realized Lily hadn't just been abandoned by her parents. She'd been abandoned by a system that was supposed to protect her. The legal process was long and draining. Lily's parents were eventually found living 2 states away. They showed no remorse. They signed away the parental rights without hesitation. When Mark was asked if he would consider becoming Lily's guardian temporarily, he said yes before the question was even finished. Life didn't magically become easier after that. Lily's blindness progressed, and she eventually lost what little vision she had left. There were days she was angry at the world, days she refused help just to prove she could still control something. Mark made mistakes, lost his patience, doubted himself. Jacob struggled too, learning to share his father in ways he never expected. But slowly, painfully, they learned how to be a family. They celebrated small victories. Lily learned to navigate the house on her own. Jacob learned to describe sunsets so vividly she said she could almost see them. Mark learned that love wasn't about fixing everything. It was about staying when things were broken. One night, nearly a year after that rainy evening, Mark found Lily sitting on the porch, listening to the wind. She smiled when she heard his footsteps. "I knew you'd come," she said. "Why's that?" he asked. "Because you always do." Mark realized then that the truth that stunned him wasn't just about Lily's past. It was about his own heart. He hadn't just rescued a child at a bus stop. He'd been given a second chance at family, at purpose, at becoming the kind of father who stops, even when he's tired, even when it's inconvenient, even when the road ahead is uncertain, because sometimes, stopping changes everything.